Welcome to this SKOPE webinar. I'm James Robson, Associate Professor of Tertiary Education Systems and Co-Director of SKOPE, and I'm delighted to introduce Professor Klaus Zierer, who will be giving today's talk. Klaus is Professor of School Pedagogy at the University of Augsburg in Germany and is one of our SKOPE associates. Today he'll be discussing education with technology and problematizing techno-deterministic assumptions that downplay the importance of teacher professionalisation. He'll talk for around 45 minutes and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So Klaus, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, James, and thank you for the introduction and welcome all of you. It's a great pleasure to me to have the possibility to talk today about education with technology. And as James said, I will talk about 45 minutes and afterwards we can discuss some questions. Before I start, I want first of all make clear my position because when you take a look at the debate about digitalization, you can see that it's not clear and there is a little bit discussion whether it is positive or negative. And that was the reason why, together with Julian Nieder-Rümelin, a German philosopher, I published last year a paper in the New Zurich newspaper, international newspaper, with the title, "The Debate about Digital Education is Derailed." And in this article, we make clear that you have always, on the one hand, some apocalyptic perspective on the theme digital education, and on the other hand, some euphoric perspective on the theme digital education. And in our point of view, the truth is in the middle of both extreme perspectives. And you have a second debate in the context of digital education, that you have on one hand side very strong empirical research, and on the other hand some theoretical aspects. And as often you can see that both worlds don't speak with each other. So the empirical research don't care about the educational and theoretical aspects, and the theories of education often doesn't care about the empirical results. And our point is, again here, that the truth is in the middle of both. So we try to bring together two worlds, the empirical world and the theoretical world, because we think that this is necessary to get the digital transformation well done in the educational system. And what I want to focus today is first of all on the empirical research. And therefore I want to take a look at the work of John Hattie. Probably you know John Hattie and his work, Visible Learning. And since 10 years, I'm working with him on this topic, and we try to bring visible learning up to date. And I want to show you with this slide a sort of little history of visible learning. We started in 2008 with over 800 meta-analysis, and today we are up to 2,000 meta-analysis. And you can see that there is still a growing in educational research. So we do not have a lack on missing results and missing knowledge out of the empirical research. We still have the problem how to bring the empirical educational research into the schools. And therefore, I think visible learning is still a very good resource, and it is worth to take a look at what we can see here, especially in the context of digital education. And just a comment to the method of visible learning. We do a synthesis of meta-analysis, and on this way we try to determine some factors, for example, like teacher-student relationships, for example, feedback or direct instruction, but in the context of digital education, as well, factors like the use of PowerPoint, the use of smartphones during instruction, or the use of smartphones outside of school, and ask the question, which effects do the factors have on student achievement mostly measured on the mathematics or science or language aspects. And there's a very simple statistic behind this, because the synthesis delivers a sort of effect size, which can be positive or negative. And with this simple point, it is very interesting to take a look on the data set. And I want to show you with this table that we have in the data set of visible learning effect sizes from -1 up to +2. And this is the range of all the effect sizes we have in the data set. And what is very interesting, when you sum up the effects in the over 1,800 meta-analysis, you can see that 95% of all the effects we have in the data set are positive. So the first conclusion you can draw out of visible learning is that students will leave schools with a better knowledge, with a better achievement as they come into the schools. This is very helpful for us teachers, because we can see we have a positive effect. But on the other side, it is very problematic, because everybody can say he has a positive effect on student achievement. And this is the reason for us that we have to move the hinge point from 0 up to 0.4. Why 0.4? 0.4 is the average effect size over the whole data set. And so we do not ask the question what works, because 90% of all we do in school works. We ask the question what works best. So we focus extremely on factors who have an effect size bigger than 0.4, because these factors have a high effect, and these effects and factors make really a difference compared to all other. And so the hinge point of 0.4 is, in our argumentation, a very important aspect, and that's the reason why I introduce this thinking of visible learning at this point in a more detail. The result of this statistic is, and maybe you know this already, the so-called Hattie barometer, in which he tries to bring all the statistic together. So he distinguished between high effects, greater 0.4, median effects between 0.4 and 0.2, which you can measure in normal school, normal instruction, no special effects in the school, so really normal what happened there. You can talk of low effects between 0 and 0.2, which you often can measure because students get older without instruction, they get in contact to peers, they watch TV, they talk to each other, and so they get progress in their achievement. And of course, you have some negative effects, which are below 0. And as I mentioned before, only 5% in our data set have a negative effect. But of course, every one of these factors which has a negative effect is important in my point of view. So this is the background of my empirical database and of visible learning. And now I want to show you some factors out of visible learning. And I want you to ask to think about, what do you mean, which effects the factors on student achievement have? Do you think they have a positive effect, greater 0.4, or do you think they have a medium or low effect between 0 and 0.4, or perhaps do you think they have a negative effect? And the factors are the following. The first one is depression. So I take a look at the students, especially because I think we have to know how digital natives are thinking, feeling, and acting before we can start thinking about instruction, teaching, and learning. So the first factor is depression. What do you think, which effect does depression has on student achievement? Greater 0.4, between 0 and 0.4, or maybe negative. The factor mobile phones use outside of schooling. So when they use mobile phones in their free time, which effect does this usage have on student achievement in the school? The third one is sleep disorder. When a student have problems sleeping and have a sort of disorder, what do you think? Which effect has this on student achievement? Greater 0.4, positive, between 0 and 0.4, or maybe negative. Cyberbullying, a phenomenon which is rising extremely, especially in Germany too, and I think very similar in English-speaking countries, because students are more and more time in social media, so the phenomenon of cyberbullying increases. Which effect do you think does cyberbullying has on student achievement? Social networks like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, the time students spend in these social networks, which effect does this time have on student achievement? Now, sleep duration and sleep quality. So just looking at the sleep of the students, which effect has sleep on student achievement? When there is a good quality, when there's a good duration, what effect has this on student achievement? Then some classical factors like the self-concept. There's a huge research on self-concept or on self-efficacy. What effect does self-concept or self-efficacy on student achievement has, or working memory, or the question of learning strategies? When a student knows how to underline words, how to learn, how to repeat, how to challenge oneself regarding learning tasks. So which effects result out of these factors? What do you think? Greater 0.4, between 0 and 0.4, or maybe negative? With the next slide, I want to show you the results of visible learning. And maybe there are some interesting points for you. What I want to show you with this slide is that, as I mentioned before, there are only 5% of the factors which are negative. And you can see here some factors which are negative, and all of them have to do with digitalization. So what is my point here is that we have to be careful about what is happening with children and youth and young people, maybe with older people too, when we use digital media in a naive and a non-reflective way, because, like always, media can be positive or can be negative. And the question always is the competences of the people that use the digital media. And this is my point. When we take a look at the digitalization, the great task and the great challenge for every educational field is that we have to get good concepts of media education, because the people need instruction, need some support, how to use media in a positive way, and not fall into the problems digital media also have. And what you can still see as well is that the classic factors like self-concept, working memory, self-efficacy, or learning strategies are as well very important for the digital natives compared to the former years. So these are still very important factors for student achievement. And against this background, I want to show you a headline in the newspapers in the August, I think it was last year, yes, with the title, China further restricts access to computer games. Only 3 hours in the week, youth up to 18 years have the possibility to play online games, 1 hour on Friday, 1 hour on Saturday, and 1 hour on Sunday. Of course, in a democratic system like Germany or England, it is not possible to think about this, but I think we should take care and think about why China is doing this. And I think they see the problem, what can happen when the youth is going into this section without without some sort of, here's a restriction, but what I would say, a sort of media education, which is very necessary to get the competences for the young people to use media in a positive way. This year, I published an article in Spiegel, which is one of the biggest weekly in Germany, with the title Wiping Ourselves to Death. It was a title according to Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. Maybe you know this really interesting book still today. And I wrote this article because this year we have some death of children, the year up 8 and 9 years old, which died because of some really, really stupid TikTok challenges. So I think we can see here some cases which are really problematic and which should be important when we talk about digital education and media education. So again, the point, digital media have some positive aspects for sure, and it is important that we see the positive aspects and that we bring these positive aspects into the schools and in teaching and learning. But we have some negative aspects, and these are very important when we think about education in the age of digitalization. So in the next few minutes, I want to take a closer look in the context of teaching and learning. And I want to seek for the positive effects digital media can have when we talk about teaching and learning. And therefore, I want to show you again some factors out of visible learning. And again, please think about what do you mean have the factors effect? Greater 0.4, between 0 and 0.4, or maybe negative on student achievement. The first factor, clicker, for example. When you ask the students a question and give 4 answers as a possibility, they can log in and you can see in the next second how many percentage have the right answer and how many percentage have the wrong answers. So what effect does this sort of media has on student achievement? Computer-assisted instruction, when you use computer to show diagrams, to show models, to make some visualizations, what do you think has this factor effect on student achievement? Flipped classroom, to change, to flip schooling, to give the input of the teacher to the students. They should prepare themselves before lesson. They come prepared into the lesson, and you can talk immediately about the questions, about the mistakes, bring them in peers together. What effect does this flipped classroom has on student achievement? Intelligent tutoring systems, what is a programming of task which is orientated on the mistakes students made, so the next task and question is always not too easy and not too hard. It's always in the sphere of challenge. What do you think that this factor has on student achievement? Interactive learning videos, for example, that you can see videos, for example, YouTube as well, but you bring some didactical elements to the videos. For example, the video stops, there's a question the student has to answer, and if they have the right answer, the video is going on. If there's the wrong answer, they have to read, for example, a text, think about again, make the answer again, and then the video starts going on. Mobile phone use or tablets during the lessons, which effect does this have? One-on-one laptop, when you give a laptop or a tablet to every student, what has happened during the COVID pandemic nearly over the whole world. And then a sort of factors which is focusing on different aspects: foreign languages, math, other subjects, reading, sciences, writing, tertiary sector, primary sector, college, special needs, high school, or use of PowerPoint. So what do you think do these factors have on student achievement. Which effect do this factor have on student achievement? I want to show you with the next slide the effect sizes we have in the data set. And again, greater 0.4, the hinge point is very important, a very powerful factor. Below, you can do it, but at least this won't change very much. And maybe some negative effects, which are very important too. So here are the numbers. And of course, some critical people, critical regarding to empirical research, and of course critical to visible learning, because visible learning is a synthesis of a huge data set. So it's getting some sort of bird view on what's happening on the ground. And of course, you should be critical to empirical research. And some people say, oh God, what should all this number show me? I can't see anything. And I want to make clear that with this approach, you can draw some very important conclusion on the power of digital education and on the possibilities and the disabilities digital education has, especially digital media has. The first look I want to make is on the overall effect sizes. When I all put the meta-analysis of digital education together, and I can see an effect size of 0.26. So under the hinge point of 0.4. So all the people who are claiming that there is a digital revolution in education, you can answer not yet, because the effect size is below 0.4. But what is important in my point of view is not yet. So we have to take a closer look. Why and where are the possibilities? And therefore, I want to first take a look at one argument you often can hear, that is the digital media has the greatest effects the older the students are. Is this argument right? When I highlight the factors, tertiary sector, primary sector, college and high school, the argument would be right if you can see rising effect sizes from primary school up to colleges. It's not the case. So the conclusion is the possibility of positive effects of digital media does not or is not connected to the age of the students. There's another question which is more important. And some people say, oh, of course, it's a question of the subject. We have some subjects which are very good connected to technique, to digital media, like example, math or sciences. And therefore, I want to highlight the factors which are focusing on different subjects. And what you could see here is, in my point of view, really surprisingly, that the subjects which are very close to technique, for example, math or sciences, have the lowest effect sizes. And on the other hand, foreign languages has a very high effect size, special needs has a very high effect size. So the conclusion is that the power of digital media is not connected to the subject. There must be another kind which is more important than the subject. And then some people say, yes, of course, it's the digital media itself which is most important. We have some new media. They should be powerfuler or more powerful than the older media. And when I highlight the factors which are focusing on the question of digital media, you can see, again, this argument does not have much support out of the empirical data, because use of PowerPoint, very low effect, clicker, very low effect, flipped classroom, very low effect. On the other side, intelligent tutoring systems, which we have since the programmed instruction in the 1960s, 70s, has a high effect. So there must be a miracle, or the core message does not lie in the age of the students, does not lie in the subject, and does not lie in the age of the digital media. Perhaps one important slide I want to show you, because some people argue that visible learning, older studies as well as the data of newer studies. And the argument is the older study maybe bring the average effect sizes down, and so the result is not really clear and has some bias. And therefore we made the following table, and you can see here all the meta-analysis we have, and the x-angle, the year of publication, and up the effect sizes. And you can see here very clear the black line, the regression line, that we have over 30, 40 years, a constant effect size of 0.3. So the result is we do not yet have a digital revolution in education. Interestingly, when you, for example, think about the speed of processors over the last 30, 40 years and the development of the speed of the processors, this would be a line which is going straight away and reaches into the sky. As well, when you think about the quality of screens, for example, or the possibilities you can save data on some sticks or something like that. In all these fields, we have an enormous technical revolution. The line goes up. But we have the great challenge how to bring this technical revolution into the schools. And what the data show, it is not as easy as we often think about it. And so I want to go deeper in some effect sizes. The first is pandemic-related school closures. The last 2 years, I have 3 children, all in the school ages, and I can tell you this was really, really, really hard times. 3 children at home, 2 in the primary school, 1 in the middle school, German gymnasium, and it is really, really hard time. And I very soon recognized that this could not work really, because there is something missing. All the technique is okay, all the digital media is okay, but students need the peers. And as a father or mother, you can stand for the peers. The peers are so important for learning. The relationship to the peers, to the teachers are the most important, and are very often the central motivation for children going to school. And so we have here effect sizes which are really negative. And in my point of view, we have to think about how to handle with generation COVID, I call it, and I'm working on a book on this theme, because I think it is the greatest challenge for the next years, because we have a very strong connection between the educational achievements of a generation and the power regarding economics and democracy. So there are a strong connection for our society, and we have to take care about this. Second factor which I want to show you is the use of PowerPoint, and you can see here a low effect size, and the data show that the effect size could as well be negative too. And interesting is the observation we can get out of the educational research. One point is that teachers who use PowerPoint often talk faster than teachers who don't use PowerPoint. A second addressing point is, which can get to a negative effect, is that when teachers show children and pupils some complex models or diagrams, they often use one slide to show them the complexity. Instead of, when they use a chalk and a board, they painted it step by step, and students can see the connection between the different aspects. And often when they use PowerPoints, this is one slide and everything you can see at one side. And this is a problem for the working memory of the students. And now a very important point for me. All what I have said here is not the problem of the digital media and not the problem of the PowerPoint. All of this is a question of educational expertise. So it is our great challenge how we teach teachers to make them professional regarding educational media, digital media, to can use it in a way students can benefit of it in their learning processes. And this is a core message when I talk about digital media. Very similar to the factor of mobile phone and assisted instruction. The effect size is very low, and perhaps you have the discussion in England as well. Bring your own device. What in some context and for some politicians would be the simplest way that we say, okay, students, you all have your mobile phones, bring it into class and let's learn with it. And so we have a digital transformation. I would say, be careful about that idea. And why I say this, I want to show you a study which is called Brain Drain. And the brain drain study is very interesting because the researcher made 3 groups, and the groups have to make and write a test regarding attention and achievement. And the first group has to turn their smartphone off, lie it on the table, and then write the test. The second group has to turn off the smartphone, put it into the bag, and then write the test. And the third group has to leave their smartphone out of the classroom and then have to write the test. And the question was, is there a connection regarding the smartphone and the how near the smartphone is and the achievement and the attention? And the answer is very simply, yes, it is. The nearer the smartphone is, the lower is the attention and the lower is the achievement. And this is a very important point because it shows a sort of attention killer, I would say, smartphone says. And perhaps you can observe it in your all-day life as well. And a teacher in England tries to find it out how big is the question of the potential of or of the reducing of just a second, the attention, because a smartphone is in the ear of the learner. And he said to the students, please let all your smartphones on. So don't turn it off during a lesson over 45 minutes. And whenever a message is coming in via Twitter, Facebook, or Snapchat, please go to a board, make a line, and after 45 minutes, we take a look how many messages are coming into our classroom and who have nothing to do with learning and teaching. And the picture is the following one. You can find it on Twitter. Over 350 messages which don't have anything to do with learning. And you can see here the disruption of attention and the disruption of learning processes. And this is the question I want to raise here. And this is the point why media education is so important. Because again, this is not the problem of digital media. It's again a question how we use digital media. We have to show the learner when it is better to turn the smartphone off or when it is useful to turn the smartphone on. A point where you can use smartphones very good in instruction and to rise achievement and to support teaching is when you connect it with a very important factor, feedback. We know that feedback is very powerful, and not only the feedback the teachers gives to the students, much more important is the feedback the teacher receives from the students, because the students have a very clear view on if the instruction, the teaching is challenging, is motivating, if there is a good classroom management, if there is a good group work between the students, if methods and media is clear. So is there a big clarity in the instruction process? And so you can use smartphones here to get the feedback from the students to the teacher very effective. And so you have a time gain and a knowledge gain, because you have the results compared to paper and pencil when you use smartphones questionnaire just in a few minutes, so very effective. And you can use very good questionnaires, validated questionnaires. And so this is a point where digital media can have a great effect, a great positive effect on student achievement. Another factor, one-on-one laptop, I want to talk about, especially because during the COVID pandemic, in most countries, students get one-on-one laptops or tablets. So it's interesting what the empirical research shows about us about the effects on one-on-one laptops have on student achievement. And again, there is a very interesting research with the title, "The pen is mightier than the keyboard." And meanwhile, there are the first meta-analysis which supports the results of the first study in this context. The pen is mightier than the keyboard. And the question the researcher here was, how do learner learn better, memorize the content better if they follow the instruction while writing with paper and pencil or while writing on a keyboard? And the result is very clear regarding the generation digital natives. The pen is mightier than the keyboard. Interesting is the observation the researcher made. The first thing they see was that if students are writing with paper and pencil, they're writing not more, they're writing less compared to students with writing with the keyboard. And this is interesting because the attention is different if students are writing with paper and pencil or if they're writing with the keyboard. So it seems while writing with paper and which was the second observation, they can see on the scripts the student make some connections, add here a comment, add there a comment, while students writing with the beginning straight to the end, no connection, no going forward, no going backward. And this is as well a point where you can see there is a difference. So we should be careful and say, okay, students yesterday used paper and pencil, and today give them a tablet and everything is working. No, this is not the case. The result, in my point of view, show again all the problems and all the possibilities and maybe disabilities are not the problem of the digital media. Again, it is a question of media competences. So we have to make the students clear what are the benefits of using paper and pencils, what are the negative effects, what are the possibilities of keyboards, tablets, and maybe where are the problems while using this media. And here is the question of media education. And that's the reason why I always make it as my central point. Media education is more important than ever. And maybe some people of you say, okay, keyboards, stuff students used yesterday, today they use tablets. And on a tablet, you can write nearly on the same way like paper and pencil. And that is true. The digital media getting better and better. But maybe there is a difference. And some researcher asked the question, is there a difference? And I really can say this is one of the interesting meta-analysis in this context of Delgado et colleagues with the interesting title, "Don't Throw Away Your Printed Books." And what they found out is that researchers tried to analyze when students write down on the tablet their information they get in an instructional lesson. And then one group learned from the tablet, so they read what they've written on the tablet, compared to a group which printed out what they have written on a tablet and then read it off a printed paper. Make this a difference? And of course it does. Don't throw away your printed books. Students who read from a paper get a better achievement, get a better grades. And interesting here again, the observation. What's the reason for the difference? And the reason is on a point that students who read from a paper read slowly, get into deep reading compared to students who read on the tablet. You wipe the things very fast away and it is a fast reading, but not a slow reading, a deep reading. And this is again interesting. And again, this is the point. It's not the problem of digital media. It's a question of media competences and of media education. So please, let us not be as naive and say, only give the students the digital stuff and then it works. No, it does. We have to be careful. There are possibilities and there are disabilities. And it is our chance as teachers to get the turn into the positive way when we see the chances and we see the risk, when we know about the chances and we know about the risks. So sometimes I summarize all of this into the sentence learning remains learning. And some people say that doesn't make a sense, learning remains learning. But I explain this to you. And I want to talk about 3 myths, which are very important. The one myth is that some people are saying students today don't need knowledge because all the knowledge is in the internet. So why should they learn some stuff? It's easy to make a click and then I have the information. But it's not very intelligent to argue on this way, because our goal in education is always transfer and problem solving. And to reach this level, it is important that the information you need for transfer and problem solving is in your head. You don't have a chance when this information is on a computer or in the internet. So you have still to learn the important knowledge, the important informations on the level of reproduction, reorganization, and then come to the level of transfer and problem solving. Of course, we can discuss about the question of all the stuff students learn in schools are worthy to know. Of course, some things are not as important as some people think, but we still have to learn some information and to go to the steps of a reproduction, reorganization, transfer, and problem solving. And it doesn't matter if you learn with traditional media or digital media. A second myth is that digital media makes learning very easy. And I want to, with this slide, remember the learning curve of Ebbinghaus. Was a psychologist and one of the first to show that the moment of memorizing the information is the moment of forgetting this information. And when there are no good revisions and repetitions and no sort of repetition, learning gets lost very quickly. So normally you have about 5 to 7 revisions to bring information from your short time memory to your long time memory. And this is the case if you learn with traditional media or digital media. And this is very important for me because some people say, oh, digitalization is so easy, so quickly. Yes, that's true in some cases, but not in this point to bring the information from a short time memory into a long-term memory. And the third myth is about motivation. One of the fascinating things in my point of view, but when you take some psychological research into mind, it's very easy to explain. Because we can see when you implement tablets into a class or make a tablet class, that motivation is rising. Students learn likely and they love going to school for about 2 or 4 weeks. When they feel, okay, it's still about learning math, the motivation goes down. And it is very easily to explain when you take a look about on the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. A new tablet is an extrinsic motivation. Of course, during my school period, it was for me a very big extrinsic motivation when I got a new pencil or a pen. oh, I like to write, or a new paper, I like to write on it, but not really long. So what the real challenge in education is to get a high intrinsic motivation. And of course, we can use a high extrinsic motivation when we change a little bit our lesson, our teaching, and bring it perhaps to an intrinsic motivation. This could be a chance where we use digital media for a better education. But you won't get the extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation when you change nothing and try to teach in the same way like you did perhaps the last 10, 20, 30 years. So you have to think about what you are teaching. And this is for me the point. Successful learning requires a sort of grammar, I say. Commitment and effort, cooperation and exchange, detours and aberrations, positive relationships, mistakes, a positive, critical, constructive culture of mistakes. Mistakes are no problem. Mistakes are very important in the learning process. And as a teacher, you have to show how important they are, because they show me what the students can and show me as well what the next steps of the students are. And this is very important to see the power of mistakes here. Challenges rather than under or over challenges. Intensive discussion and feedback, and a shared vision. A shared vision about teaching and learning, a shared vision about education, a shared vision about democracy, a shared vision about our society. And this is the ground spirit of all the education. What is the vision? Why are we here in school? Not because there is a curriculum we have to work on. No, we have a vision of our society. And this is our main goal, which brings us together in educational contexts. And maybe sometimes some people say teaching subject matter knowledge is the most important thing a teacher could have. So the knowledge and the subject you teaches. And you can see here a really low effect size. And this is the last point I want to explain, because it makes my main argument clear. Of course, the most important thing is the expertise of teachers, but it's not only lying in teaching subject matter knowledge. There are some aspects which are very important. And to bring this effect size in the right understanding, I want to show you the so-called didactical triangle, which goes back into the ancient world. You can find it by Aristotle in his Rhetoric. And in the modern times, we speak, especially in German education, of teaching, when you have this didactical triangle, and if there is a teaching, you have three relationships: a relationship between teacher and student, a relationship between students and context, and the relationship between teacher and content. And now please bring teaching subject knowledge to one of these three relationships. And you will see it fits perfect to the relationship between teacher and content, but it doesn't fit to the relationship between teacher and students, student and teacher. And this makes my argument clear. To make a good instruction, to make good teaching, you need more than only a high subject matter competence. You need as well a pedagogical competence or the didactical competence. Without these other competences, subject matter competence must have a low effect, and only a high subject matter competence cannot bring a good teaching, as well as only a high didactic competences does make a good teaching. So it is the connection of these three competences which are very important. And in visible learning, we found a very interesting aspect, and in my point of view, some sort of core of teacher quality, what John Hattie called mind frames. And calling this mind frames, he was thinking about the reasons, the ground motivation a teacher has. And I tried to explain this just before when I talk about mistakes. A teacher can see mistakes as a problem. And if he's doing so, students would get angry if they made a mistake during the lesson. And this is a great problem because mistakes are main components of learning, getting better and better. Without mistakes, you won't get better and better. So we need mind frames, for example, of teachers that they see mistakes as a very powerful moment during instruction, that we look for a mistake. I thought we get happy of a mistake because then we see what is working and what's not working yet. And then we can the next steps in the instruction and support the learners in their learning. And this drives me to the question here, our model of professionalisation, ability, knowledge, will, and judgment. So the synthesis of competences on the one side regarding subject, pedagogy, and didactics. And on the other side, the sort of attitudes. So my motivation I have, the judgments which are driving my action in classroom. And in our point of view, this is the core of teacher quality, and we should focus much more on these aspects in teacher education as well. And we get a support in the data set of visible learning with the factor of collective teacher efficacy, because this collective teacher efficacy focus on the vision, on the shared vision in a school staff. When teachers talk together about their teaching, when they use the mistakes they made during a lesson to get better, when they think about the goals, the message, the media, when they think about what is our vision of our school, what is our vision of our society, and bring their competences together, they have the greatest effect on student achievement. And so talking about the values, talking about the judgment is one of the central aspects of teacher professionalism and teacher expertise. And this is the point as well when we talk about digital education. Of course, there are a lot of aspects which can support student learning, but we need a discussion about it. We have to think about it together and to get a shared vision of the possibilities of digital education and to see as well clear the risks digital education has as well. The last point I want to talk about, I only want to show you, and I cannot explain in a detail because time is going too fast. But I want to make just one point. In my point of view, the so-called summer model of Ruben Fuenteventura, who is a professor of informatics in Harvard, has a great potential to bring the possibilities of digital media to the point. With the summer model, he distinguished 4 levels of digital media use. The first is the substitution level, when you take digital media instead of traditional media. For example, instead of paper and pencil, you give the students a tablet. This has no effect, at least, on student achievement. The second level is augmentation level, which means normally in traditional ways, students have paper and pencil. He has some books, he has a lexica, he has some other stuff to get his learning better. In the digital age, the only thing the students need is, again, a laptop, because in a laptop you have some lexicas, you have some other stuff, but the effects on student achievement, again, are very low because it is still the student for itself who is sitting and making his homework, his task, and have no connection to other students, to other ideas, and so on. And following the summer model and the argumentation of Fuenteventura, the important steps are in the level of modification and redefinition, because in these 2 levels, you use the great advantage of digital media connecting people over time and space. So with digital media, as we today, you can talk together while you're not at the same place and not at the same time zone. So you can get connected over barriers of time and space. And this is a very interesting point when you think about in the classroom. For example, try to bring students together while they're writing an article with, for example, an author of a book, to bring them together. The author could read the articles of the students, give them feedback. They get a new idea. They get connected to people they would never see otherwise. And so this is the chance digital media have when you get on the level of modification. The level of redefinition is, for example, when you're not only writing articles or histories in classroom, when you, for example, write a paper, make a movie out of your article. So you get into new challenges, you use new media, making a movie, thinking about perspective of the cameras, thinking about sounds you need for your videos, sending your video to an film studio, get a feedback or something like that. And then you get people connected and use all the chances digital media have, at least. And so this is my central point here, that you can use, and there are chances for digital media. And this brings me to my last slide. Bad teaching does not get better with the help of digital media, no question. And the most times it's getting worse and worse. But only good teaching can benefit from it. So thanks you for attention, and please apologize that I just was talking a little bit too long. So thank you for your attention.
Well, Klaus, thank you very much for an excellent presentation and a really nuanced and evidence-based discussion, and great to see your children there. I think we've got a couple of minutes for some questions. So if anyone has a question, please do put your hand up, and we can get Klaus to answer them. And if not, oh, Niall, excellent.
Thanks, Klaus, for a really interesting presentation. I just have there was a number of questions that arose for me, but I'll just pick one in the interest of time. So I really like the model at the end, the SAMR model. Okay, and so I was interested in that as a lens on the papers that were used in the meta-analysis. So when you take of something like, you know, you had these categories of particular types of technologies, ITS systems, for example. So do you have any understanding or insight into how many of them were used in this way at the top level of that scale, if you like, it's similar to models of appropriation? So when you break down the use of the technology, it's not just the technology itself, a mobile phone, it's how it was used. So you focus on the pedagogical aspect, which aligns with your triangle and with the last point. So then you would not just do your analysis on the mobile phone, it'd be how the mobile phone was used. And yeah, there's a couple of questions that come from that, but I think I'll just stop there. It'd be interesting just to know that in terms of how the studies were designed, rather than the mobile phone as a thing, it's actually how it was used in a particular pedagogical manner. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. The question you ask is always very interesting in the case of a synthesis of meta-analysis, because in a meta-analysis you have mostly some research which is similar designed, but often in a synthesis of meta-analysis it gets a little bit more mixed up. So we have different aspects, and we can see this often when we take a look at the confidence intervals of the effect sizes we calculate. And of course, for example, the use of smartphones during the lesson, we have a sort of greater effects and lower effects as the reported average effect sizes. And when the effect sizes rises, it depends, of course, with the didactical concept which stands behind the usage of the media. And as I show in the summer model, when you use the media in the lower level, substitution and augmentation, you get effect sizes lower 0.4. But if you use them in the upper level, modification and redefinition, the effect sizes rises up to 0.6 to 0.8. And so this is for me a really good model to think about the use of digital media, because it leads automatically in the higher effect sizes greater 0.4. And so if we take this model, for example, use smartphones, use flipped classroom, use intelligent tutoring systems, it's a good orientation for us to think about the effects of digital media.
Okay, but the actual breakdown through the papers that are in the analysis isn't clear.
What do you mean with the breakdown?
So I would say, you know, when you go back to the early part of your slides, you had a table where you would say the effect size of the impact is whatever, you know, 0.29, whatever it was, and then you'd associate that with a particular technology. Is that an average related to how it was used, or is it just if it mentions a mobile phone in a paper, it'll be included? It doesn't then look at the way in which that was used. That's what I meant by using the SMA or to analyze that and then look at the effect size.
Yes. Mostly we make it like this way. We're searching for meta-analysis, which are focusing, for example, of usage of mobile phones during instruction, and bring them together. And besides, we are looking for moderators in the papers, and to make clear what's the reason for high effect sizes and low effect sizes comparable to meta-analysis itself. So when I'm only reporting the effect size, normally I have to go deeper into every factor and say, okay, you can rise the effect size when you use mobile phones like this, and you're getting lower when you use mobile phones like that.
That's helpful. Yeah, no, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Niall. We had a quick question from Hannah in the chat. Hannah, would you like to ask your question? Or would you prefer me to read it out?
Sure, you just might hear my dog in the background. I was just wondering, why do you think the effect sizes were so small for the papers that were looking at digitizing math and science courses?
That's an interesting question. What we can see here is that very often digital media were used on the level of substitution, for example. So teacher use digital media in math, for example. Normally they use chalk and a board. Now they use PowerPoint or a smartboard or something like that. And this is often the only thing they use digital media. Nothing changes in the instruction instead. But what we, for example, can see as well is here, if a teacher using, for example, apps like Geobra to showing geometrical aspects clearer, to getting in the context of individualization, make some differentiation in the learning process, see the challenges of the learner, you can rise the effect size, of course. So if you get into the higher level of the summer model, the effect sizes rises. But what we can see in the data set so far, most of the studies are on the level of substitution, some are in the level of augmentation, and they have problems to getting in higher levels. And that's the state we have at the moment in this field. Just another example to explain why, for example, foreign language has so much high effect size. You can give students today some apps, and with the help of the apps, students can hear at home as well as in school. A digital native is speaking and is pronouncing in a correct way. So they get very powerful feedback here. And so the effects here are rising very fast. And this shows that it's, again, here a question how you use digital media in the subject, if it's getting high effects or low effects.
Thank you. We've probably got time, if you're okay, Klaus, for another question. So Ted, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the talk. Very interesting. I had one sort of overall question just about achievement and sort of how it's like normally conceptualized across these studies. I mean, I assume it has to do with outcomes on standardized testing and things like that, but I mean, does that pose any problems for sort of like the very, like figuring out what effect sizes are and how you want those certain things to affect achievement, sort of maybe narrowly defined? And just sort of want to hear your thoughts on that issue too, because if you're also as a sort of one separate add-on in the SAMR model, when you're looking at redefinition, or you get the highest tier, that may not sort of like the outcomes of that may be at odds with sort of typical centers of achievement. So there's some interesting things to sort of explore between those two things.
Yeah. Normally the research which get picked up in meta-analysis and in visible learning followed a so-called gold standard. You have a group where you make intervention and you have a control group. And before you start the intervention, you take a look at the groups if they are comparable regarding socioeconomic backgrounds, regarding previous knowledge, regarding the school context, the parental context, regarding the teacher who are doing the intervention. And then you make a test, a valid, reliable and objective test, normally in math, in science, or in languages, in both groups, in the groups with the intervention and in the control group. And after 6 or 8 weeks, for example, time period, how long the intervention is, you make a second test in both groups. And comparing the group differences, you can measure how the effect was because of the intervention. And then you can make a conclusion on the intervention. And of course, it is very important that you take a look at the groups before the intervention. Are they comparable? And there is no doubt there is good research and bad research out there, as well in the empirical research. And sometimes you see a very clear and detailed comparison of the different groups, but sometimes you see it not. So it is good research and bad research that has to do with some biases. You always have an empirical data set. And in my point of view, this is the nature of empirical research. The great question always arises, at least, is how to interpret the data. Which conclusion can you draw out of the results? And this is the main task for me as an educational researcher.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all for your questions. And thank you, Klaus, for a fantastic presentation. We thoroughly look forward to your new book coming out, and I hope you'll share it with us when it's out. And we will we'll share it with the group and with the centre. So once again, thank you, Klaus, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also you. It was nice to meet you here. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.